Hey guys, welcome to the show. So glad you guys could make it tonight for our new Wednesday streams. If I look a little sweaty, I'm sorry, my air conditioner's going out, so it's a little warm in here. What with two bearded dragons now, um, it's a little warm. But you will notice it's a little quieter because all the chickens have transitioned to the outside for now. As you can see, there's a ton in the incubator, but nobody has started hatching yet. So you know, good evening, El Gusto and Blondie, and that looks like Osiris and Crystal. Thanks. It's going pretty good, Crystal. We're doing all right. Just kind of doing. I did. We got another one. Her name's Fancy. We got her from my wife's cousin, which is where we got the other one from. Oh, hang on a second. I had been using the pop filter on my mic oh for cozy horrors over there. But yeah, no, it's been a good night. All the chickens are now settled outside for now until these guys hatch. We've been slowly slipping them under the broody hens, so they've just got little clutches of chicks now, which is really cute. If you're on Discord, I'll put you up some chick pics later, I suppose. I've got a bunch of them. I know how you guys like to keep up with the chickens. Absolutely, and I have quite a lot of pop sometimes, so. Oh, make sure, yeah. I'm not doing too bad there. Alrighty. Well, if I could get my bearded dragons to lay eggs, I'd definitely put them in the incubator. Yup. Remember, guys, remember to like and subscribe. We're almost at 6,600 subscribers. So we're getting there. Won't be too much longer before we hit 7,000. That'll be kind of cool. What the heck? Where'd it go? There it is. All right. Trying to get everything set up there. Let's see. Trying to think if we've got any new news. There's really nothing much at the moment. Working on another audio book, so look for that one pretty soon. It's about aliens, and it's called They. I'm working on another one about it's about like I guess it's a zombie romance. I'm not 100%. She sent it to me, but I haven't done anything with it yet. I'm trying to get done with the alien one first. I tend to agree with you, Crystalline, but I'll take what I can get. Let's see. Trying to think if we've got any sort of news here. If you guys are looking for audiobooks to listen to, I'll be glad to send some links. I just finished another one. In fact, hang on. Well, I better finish this one up then. Trying to find the sales page here so that I can send you guys a link. Darn it. There it is. Oh wow! I did not realize she was charging $20 for that. Dang. Yeah, no, it's got some good ratings. I'm trying to see if I can get a link to it or something here so I can send it to you guys. I suck at this. There it is. If you're looking for a good mystery novel, of course it won't get the whole link. I'll just give you the title. It's on Audible. It's called Behind the Door. And if you pick it up, I get paid as well for that because I narrated it. So if that's something you're interested in, be my guest. I definitely like to see sales on audiobooks. It's always cool. Oh, there we go. Blondie's got the link. Use that link. That's probably a better link. Well, without any news, I guess we'll go ahead and roll into our stories for the night. We're going to do part 11 of our Black Site story for this one. I think we're probably close to taking a break on our Black Site stories. And then we'll pick up something else for a little while until we hit another part of it. I don't know. I don't want you guys to get burnt out on them or anything. And there's so many other cool Monday stories that I know you guys want to listen to. But oh yeah, El Degusto. It's decent. It's pretty good little mystery horror story. Alrighty, let's get rolling. This is Chapter 4, Part 11 of our... is Chapter 4, Part 11 of our Black Site 12 story, which is called Small Plans. And I hope you guys enjoy it. Hang on a sec. Let me do a check here. Check. 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 Okay, good. Static has been real manageable lately, so that's good. Alright. I know that you spoke to the boy with the blue band group who keeps finding all those children for us. I want to know what you talked about, and I don't want any funny business. Dr. Hammarskjöld had expected a conversation like this. There were cameras everywhere, and the idea that Security Chief Ridley wouldn't have noticed their conversation was slim to nil. He had prepared himself for any number of gambits, but the one thing that he wouldn't do is tell the old ghoul the truth. This way, Dr. Hammarskjöld's job... This may be Dr. Hammarskjöld's job, but he was no more thrilled about it than any of the kids who were stuck here. He was here because he had to be, and it was the only way that he could get anyone to take his research seriously. He could go out into the world and be a professor or some scientist's lackey, but he would always come back to this place when it called because, in a lot of ways, it was home, and when they called, you had to go back home. Usually it goes through ACX, El Degusto. They put out a call for narrators, and then a narrator will pick it up like me, and then I'll narrate it, and then we'll share royalties on it usually. Sometimes they pay me up front, but usually I get 50% of the royalties on it. Oh, thank you, Blondie. Hey, Cindy, we're glad you could make it. Alrighty. We had an incident during his midterm. Dunstan got a little overwhelmed with one of the exercises, and I tried to talk to him about it before he ran away. He'd been avoiding me after that, when he could, and I wanted to talk with him about it so that we could clear the air. Dr. Hammarskjöld knew that Ridley wasn't likely to believe that, but he also knew that the audio in the cafeteria wasn't good enough to pick out individual conversations, unless it was really fine-tuned to do so. Most of the techs who knew how to do that didn't know how to get clean audio from something like that anyway, so he felt like his conversation with Dunstan was pretty safe. Ridley looked... God, I'll be really glad to get my studio back. Hey, Winter, we're glad to see you. Ridley looked at him as if he couldn't believe what he was hearing. Are you sure that's all you talked about? Yeah, try that again. Ridley looked at him as if he couldn't believe what he was hearing. Are you sure that's all you two talked about? You didn't maybe share any secrets with him that might be less... might be best left unheard? The kind of secrets that a teacher might have shared with you once upon a time. Dr. Hammarskjöld shook his head. No, sir, I don't feel the need to burden my charges with anything unduly heavy in the way that you do. I was simply trying to console him, so we didn't find him dead one evening. I've been helping him repress some of those visions he's seeing, the truly grisly ones, but I think perhaps he had figured out what I was doing, and it made him have a small fit. He's better now, and we're back on speaking terms again. I'm so very glad that you and a little boy are friends again, Security Chief Ridley said in a way that let him know. He knew would get under the little man's skin. Friends? No, sir. We can't be friends with the children. You've seen to that. They aren't even people anymore as far as you're concerned. They're just cogs in a machine that do exactly what you want them to do until they're... Struggling tonight, guys. Until their teeth chip off and you decide to throw them into the scrap heap. Security Chief Ridley smiled at him, but it was not an altogether healthy smile. Careful, Nathan, or I'll get the feeling that you don't have any teeth left, and it might be time to throw you into the junk pile. Regardless, I suspect that some of the students are planning something. I want you to keep an eye on the Blue Band group, especially Dunstan. He's been meeting with several of the other students that I suspect are up to no good, and I want to know if it's a prank or something a little worse. Dr. Hammarskjöld raised an eyebrow. Well, which students do you suspect? Security Chief Ridley steepled his fingers and shook his head at the little doctor. Never you mind, but keep an eye on Dunstan, and Gerald as well. I'd ask you to keep an eye on Rebecca, but she's not one of the students that you often have the pleasure of doing exercises with, is she? Dr. Hammarskjöld looked away, but his shame was apparent. He blamed himself for the girl being here, and rightfully so. He'd been a plant for the kindergarten, for the black site, and if she had to blame someone for being here, he was a pretty good target. He had also... Dang it. She had also been his patient, and she had felt betrayed when she realized that he hadn't been there to take care of her, but to groom her and throw her back to the wolves. She hadn't spoken to him the whole time that she'd been here, and who could blame her? He had betrayed her trust, and if the roles were reversed, he wouldn't have wanted to speak to her either. He would have probably wanted to beat the crap out of her, and he suspected there was a beating in his future from that front. If you're planning something noble in that foolish little head of yours, Security Chief Ridley said, which brought Dr. Hammarskjöld out of his daydream, then I'd squash it now. These children are government assets, not grade schoolers that need you to help them. What we choose to do with them is sanctioned by the government and outside the purview of you or anyone else." "That's a lie," Dr. Hammarskjöld said, as he stood to his full and less than respectable height of 4'10". "I can't imagine that any government knows about this place or what exactly is going on. I'm sure that they fund it, and I'm sure that it appears on an expense report or two, but it would really disappoint me to know that anyone actually has a clue what's going on here." "Think whatever you like," Ridley said, "but you know that the government does worse things than this. This is a drop in the bucket, nothing in the grand scheme of things. And you would do well to remember that you are a part of it. If you start having ideas about telling someone or helping someone get information out, then you should remember that you'll go down with the rest of us. How much paperwork has your name on it right next to mine? How many lesson plans and daily logs have you signed? You may not agree with it, but you're a part of it. So go on and do your research, and when you realize that all your test subjects will be gone in the next month and a half, you'll realize that it amounts to nothing. With any luck, we won't need you to come back for a while, and you can go back to doing whatever it is that you've decided to do. You're only as useful as I believe you are, and your usefulness is starting to wear thin." "May I go now?" Dr. Hammarskjöld asked, his own patience running thin. "I have work to do, and not a lot of time to do it." Security Chief Ridley spun back to his monitors and dismissed him with a wave. "Go on, then, but remember that we're always watching." Dr. Hammarskjöld excused himself and left Security Chief Ridley's office as he went back to doing what he'd been doing for the past 4 days. He'd asked around covertly, saying that he had borrowed something from one of the snatchers and wanted to find them. He learned that the woman, Janice, had been here up until a couple of weeks ago, but she'd gone out on leave and wasn't expected back until the end of the month. That was pretty thin time for what Dunstan was hoping for, but the little doctor supposed it wasn't out of the question. If he could arrange for Janice to meet her long-lost son and maybe get some kind of closure for the both of them, then maybe it would make up for the other things that he was doing, the less palatable things. He had met with her partner, the brute that she always went out snatching and grabbing with, and he had asked him to relay a message to her if he would. Wheeler had laughed as he looked at the little man and said, "Don't take this the wrong way, Doc, but I can already tell you, you're not her type." Dr. Hammarskjöld had smiled. This was the usual sort of comments he got from people who saw him as little more than a child himself, and told him that he had a message to give her. He said that he would like to set up a meeting with her when she came back. He would be very appreciative if the man could facilitate that. Wheeler had nodded and said that he would talk to her about it. That had been a couple of days ago, and now he was gone as well. Dr. Hammarskjöld didn't know where the snatchers went when they weren't here, probably to the same place they went when he wasn't here, which was anywhere that wasn't here. He hoped that she would get the message and that she would be here in time for Dunstan to meet her. Dr. Hammarskjöld sometimes saw a lot of his own daughter and the kids with the weird powers, and he knew that if he could meet with his own daughter for more than a few minutes, he would probably give up anything. If he could just work up the courage to tell her who he was and ask her if she would like to get dinner or maybe just talk for a little while, he believed he could die happy and maybe put all of this behind him. He would have to answer someday for all the things he had done for the Black Site, but maybe helping Dunstan would make some of it a little more palatable. There you go. That's your Black Site story. Hey, Leia, we're glad you made it. Oh, no. Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. It's just one thing after another here. Oh, no. Poor Blaze. Alrighty. Well, let's move on to our... Let's move on to our Kashmir story, I guess. As many of you will remember, the Bright has been becoming kind of a problem around town. And it seems that in today's story, there's a little bit of a meeting of the minds between some of the important people in town. And the mayor, who's a character we haven't met yet. Hang on, let me fix some spacing issues here. I worry sometimes that these stories aren't quite long enough, these Kashmir stories, but I have to remind myself sometimes, I really want every Kashmir story to be less than about 15 minutes. I want them to be just these little information bites, like these little peeks into Kashmir people, you know? I don't want them to be like information dumps, but you know, I like to give you guys little looks into the town and what's going on. Oh, tell Lance we said hi. Okay, let's get this one. It's called A Meeting of the Minds, and I hope you guys enjoy it. Gentlemen, we have a very big problem. They sat around the table at City Hall as they tried to work out what they would do about the incursion they were about to hold off. They were all assembled, at least all of them that made up the unknown line of defense against Kashmir. John Marvolo was there, as was Sheriff Guthrie, and the kid who watched the bus depot. Dr. Winter sat across from the mayor, a man that very few people saw outside of election time, and there was even a spot left open for the warden of Stragview, though he never bothered to attend. There was another chair beside the mayor that was also unfilled, but it was left empty in the hope that its owner would one day come back and take it up. They made up a small group of people who not only knew what was coming, but tried to protect against it when threats reared their ugly heads in Kashmir. It was a thankless job, but someone had to do it. I assume we're talking about the writer, Sheriff Guthrie said. We weren't, said the mayor, but since we're all here, what is it about the writer that has you so worried, temporary Sheriff Guthrie? Sheriff Guthrie ground his teeth loud enough for several at the table to hear it. I will be so glad when election time comes around, and I'm either kicked out or given the title that I've upheld for the last 2 years. You never miss a chance to remind me of my position here, do you, Mayor? Are you here to... Meh. Are we here to listen to your complaints, or are you here to tell us things we need to know? The mayor asked curtly. Guthrie opened his mouth to say something biting, but swallowed it instead. Lately, the writer's activities have been very strange. The kid at the bus station made a sound that set Sheriff Guthrie's teeth on edge. He's a nut. He's been a nut for years. What could he possibly do that has you so out of sorts, Sheriff Guthrie? His movements have been very erratic lately. I've gotten 12 phone calls in the last month alone of him being in people's gardens or wandering into their house. Most of the townspeople accept that he's harmless and that he's unlikely to steal or harm anyone, but he's gonna surprise the wrong person one of these days and end up getting shot. I think it's high time that we find a better option for him before he gets hurt, or get somebody else hurt. The mayor steepled his fingers before his eyes and seemed to contemplate this. Guthrie, what do you know about the mayor? Ah, dang it. Not what I was talking about. I was reading you guys' comments and got distracted. Guthrie, what do you know about the writer? Very little, Guthrie said with frustration. I know he's been here a long damn time, but nobody seems to know much about him. I know he comes and goes as he pleases, and that he's of some importance to the town, but nobody seems to want to explain to me exactly who he is or what he does. The mayor glanced at Dr. Winters, and the two shared a look before he turned back to the sheriff. I can't go into details, not into any real depth, but it goes without saying that the writer is important. He will not come to harm unless it's something that he wishes for. He has a strange relationship with the town, and it keeps him safe. Just keep taking him out of people's houses and yards and pointing him back towards his house. If he's agitated, then he probably has some reason to be agitated. Sheriff Guthrie shook his head slowly. This will not end well. I feel like we should be taking this more seriously. The best way I can describe it is that the writer is the town's canary. The coal mine that is Cashmere needs a canary to tell us when danger is afoot. If he's agitated, if he is distressed, if he is acting out of sorts, then pay attention. He's never been wrong about these sorts of things. Guthrie looked as if he wanted to say more, but the mayor put up a hand to silence him. The reason that we're here today is because of the people who are trying to get into our town. Dr. Winters, would you like to tell us what you found inside the mind of the... Ooh, excuse me. Hey, Lou, we're glad you could make it. Inside the mind of Gladys at the radio station. Dr. Winters thought about it for a moment and then shrugged before saying, Not much. I found a very bright light nestled deep in her brain. It was like everything inside her head was held just behind a beam of the very powerful flashlight. Something else, too. It was like church music was playing behind it. That's the best way I can describe it. It was difficult to get out. It almost felt like she didn't want it to go. It was as if she had taken a liking to having it there, and she fought me mentally to keep it. Once it was out, it was like it had never been there. She went back to her regular self, but the memory shriveled inside its jar after I separated it from her. Memories, at least this one, meh. Hey, Brandy. The memory was like a parasite, and without the host, it was nothing. You're talking about what the Brat people did to her, John said, and Dr. Winter nodded. Different voice, hang on. I assume they attempted to call your radio station, the mayor said. They did, but I diverted them, and they haven't tried since. That's not the John voice. Hang on. I gotta keep track of my voices here. The only problem with having a multi-person conversation is you gotta keep track of your voices. They did, but I diverted them, and they haven't tried since. They're scary. Scarier than anything I've ever seen. Kashmir is a place of mysteries and sometimes a place of darkness, but these people are the shadows at the edge of the light. There's darkness in them. I can feel it, and I would be very afraid to find out what their intentions are for this town. Oh no. I think their intentions are pretty clear, the kid from the bus station put in. Indoctrination seems to be the only thing they're interested in. Between myself and Lou, we've put down at least 12 of their missionaries who have come to the station. They just keep showing up. They have to know that their missionaries are being dealt with, but they have an endless supply of cannon fodder, and they don't seem to mind having them mowed down. Doesn't make any sense. For a religious organization, they've almost no value for human life. It's a little worse than that, Dr. Winters put in. I've been finding something inside the heads of a few of my patients. It's not quite as potent as whatever I pulled out of your assistant, she said, as she nodded to John, but it's definitely insidious. What have you found? Sheriff Guthrie asked. TV static. TV static? The mayor asked skeptically. TV static, Dr. Winters said, and even she sounded a little skeptical. It's as if parts of their brain are clouded with TV static. I don't know how, but I think they've been touched in some way by these bright people. The people of this town are sick. Most of them are here because they can't cope with the real world, and they'd be a danger to themselves if left out in the wild. These bright people are trying to bring their poison religion into a mental ward. It's predatory in the highest degree. I agree, the mayor said. That is why we have to keep these people out at all cost. So far, I don't think they have managed to breach our borders, but I wouldn't swear to it. All of us must be vigilant against an incursion by any of these people. They have to be kept out at all cost. We all must remain vigilant and ensure that no one from this religion gets a foothold anywhere in this town. Are we understood? There was a round of agreements, and the mayor called the meeting adjourned. Everyone left with a new resolve to keep their eyes peeled for any sign of these bright people or the influence that might be around. Thought I was going to burp. The influence they might be about to bring to the town. None of them realized the barn door was already open, and the cows might already be lost. Somewhere in town, as far from the meeting hall as a hotel room is from a cardboard box, the writer was sitting in an alley and rocking back and forth. He'd been repeating the same phrase again and again for longer than he could remember, and it was beginning to eat away at his sanity. He could feel the bright as it tried to push into his town, and it was like ants crawling on his skin every time they did. They were not only working their way into the framework of Kashmir, like termites eating the foundation of a house, they were beginning to push their way into his mind. Bright, 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 he kept repeating again and again as he put his head in his hands and shook all over. Hey, buddy, are you okay? I can call somebody to help you. The writer looked up to find the bartender from the bus stop looking into the alley at him. He looked concerned, his hand outstretched in friendship, but the writer only pulled away further. Lou, he remembered. His name is Lou. He works at the bar in the Greyhound station. He's 43. He loved a woman in California, but she met someone new, and he, bright, 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 was all he could find to say. Come on, let me help you, Lou said as he came a little closer. We'll get you some water and something to eat, and you'll be right as... The rider went running out of the alley, brushing against the Good Samaritan as he ran for home, and kept repeating the same thing again and again like a chant. Bright, 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 bright. They were trying to use him to infiltrate the town, and he couldn't have that. He didn't think Dr. Winters could help him either. He didn't think anyone could help him. This was a silent battle that he was having with these forces as they tried to make him open a door into his town. He wouldn't let them in. He wouldn't give in to them, but he knew as well as anyone else that his resolve had limits. Eventually, and sooner rather than later, he would bear down. That's not the line. They would bear down on him like all the rest, and he would break. There you go. There's your Kashmir story for the day. Whew. Oh, I love white noise stories. They're always entertaining. White noise stories are pretty spooky, too. Okay, so I tell you what, let's move on to our Friday story before we get started on our short stories for Tuesday and Thursday. It's a Stragview story this week. I know what you guys have been asking for, and don't worry, there will be a grandpa story probably next week. I need to start working on this year's grandpa stories a little harder. But rest assured, we're going to have us a good old Stragview story this week. This story is called The Officer Who Came Back, and I hope you guys enjoy it. There he goes, guys, the bravest officer on the compound. Officer Laszlo lifted a hand to wave at Officer Martin and the small group of other COs that were gathered around him in the parking lot. By the smell, they were enjoying a couple of pre-shift cigarettes, and Laszlo ambled over to speak with them. The bravest? Well, I don't know about that. At least the one who shows up to work the most often on time. That got some chuckles from the assembled officers, and Laszlo laughed right along with them. Seriously, Laszlo, where do you live that's close enough to walk? I never see you drive, and I can't imagine that you walk all the way from town. Oh, it's just a little side road not far from here. My grandpa left me a house in the woods, so it isn't far. Officer Martin blew out a whistle. Whew. Then, I guess you come from brave stock. I don't know anybody who would willingly live in those woods. There's all kinds of weird stuff that lives out there. Officer Laszlo only shrugged. I guess my kin are one more weird thing, then. He headed inside to the sound of laughter, but none of them could have guessed just how accurate that statement had been. Laszlo! Right on time as usual. Laszlo greeted Sergeant Bailey as he put his belt, his wallet, and the other pocket items into the plastic box. He took off his boots as well and placed them on the conveyor. Yeah. Let's try that again. And the other pocket items into the plastic box. He took off his boot. Okay. Let's take it back to there. He took off his boots as well and placed them on the conveyor belt so they could go through the X-ray machine. This was as much a daily ritual as breakfast and lunch were, and he imagined that he could have done it in his sleep. "I swear you must have the best luck of anybody on the compound." Laszlo cocked an eyebrow at her. "What makes you say so?" "Well, we've already had 3 officers call out with the flu this week, and I don't think I've ever seen you take a sick day once. It's nasty this year, so make sure you're toting your hand sanitizer." "Oh, I don't have to worry about that. I got good genes, so I never seem to get sick." "Must be nice," Sergeant Bailey said, as she waved him through and sent him to the corridor outside the search room. Laszlo put on his boots, readjusted his belt, and headed into briefing, as he did most every day. Sergeant Bailey usually commented that he needed to eat more, since he also never brought any food with him. Laszlo always packed light, just the essentials and nothing more, not even a couple of bottles of water to get him through his shift. Laszlo never brought in anything, except what was in his pockets. Briefing was short, as its name implied. They had 2 fights that day, both inmates were sent to confinement, and everything else had run pretty smoothly, as it was supposed to. They told Laszlo he was going to E-dorm, and he nodded as he grabbed his call-outs and his master roster and headed in that direction. He was working by himself again tonight, but that was no problem. Laszlo never fell asleep on shift. He never needed a smoke break, and he never really needed any backup. He would sit in the dorm for the next 12 hours, maybe find a book to read, and then he would go home, like he always did. "Laszlo!" Officer Martin yelled as he ran to catch up with him. "Captain wanted me to remind you that you're on the A-team response tonight, in case something goes on." Laszlo chuckled. "That'd be a near miracle. I'm in E-dorm by myself." "How is it that you always seem to pull the dorm by yourself? Doesn't it ever get lonely?" Laszlo shrugged. "I guess so. That always seems to be the luck of the draw, though." As he walked towards his dorm, Laszlo reflected that he got stuck in a dorm by himself because he always came to work on time, he never complained, and his paperwork was always correct. He was a stand-up officer, reliable, and he never caused problems that other people would have to fix. Captains loved him because he came in for overtime almost any old time, and he always showed up when he said he'd be there. He never called out, he never whined about his post, and he was always there when you needed him, with a smile and a kind word. Some of that was just how he had always been, but some of that was because Officer Laszlo had a secret that he desperately wanted to keep to himself. Technically speaking, Officer Laszlo was about 15 years out of date on his certification. Technically speaking, Officer Laszlo did not eat, drink, or complain because he was not strictly amongst the living. Laszlo had been hired in 2006, and he had died in 2010. He hadn't been killed by an inmate or suffered some kind of health problem. Generally speaking, the inmates liked Officer Laszlo. He did what he said he was going to do. He always made sure they got what they needed, and he didn't pass contraband. But he would pass a word with you, if you were worth talking to. No, Officer Laszlo had been a casualty of the spirits that lived in Stragview. Uh-oh, what did I miss? He didn't exactly remember how he had died. Nobody really remembers how they died, but on April 17th, 2010, he had been found dead at his post by the next shift. When they couldn't raise him on the radio, they had just assumed that he had fallen asleep. And when the next shift got the emergency keys and made their way into the dorm, they found him sitting in the bathroom of the officer station with the most god-awful look of horror on his face that anyone had ever seen. All he remembered was sitting on the toilet as he tried to do his business before he saw a half-naked woman float through the back wall. She had seen him, he had seen her, and when she had screamed at him, he had felt something snap inside his chest. Laszlo didn't know what it had been, but he could speculate that it had been his heart. He'd been a part of the prison ever since, doomed to walk the corridors of Stragview for all time. Officer Laszlo came into his dorm and waved at Sergeant Register as he told him that he was going to go do a security check, so if he wouldn't mind, he would like him to stay for a few minutes. Sergeant Register let his officers go and told Laszlo to go ahead and do it. Everybody was more than happy to let Laszlo go ahead and do it because he usually came in and helped them when they needed it. He had taken the sergeant's overtime day not even a month before, and Register felt like he owed him something. This wouldn't make them square, but it'd go a few steps towards it. Laszlo thanked him and went out onto the floor so he could start his usual rounds. Sergeant Register wasn't the only one that was glad to see him. "Officer Laszlo, good to see you, man." "Hey, Laszlo's here. Looks like we're going to have a good night, guys." "Sarge, you know it's late night. Can we keep the TV on till 12:30? There's a movie coming on that we want to see the end of." Laszlo shrugged. "I guess it's all right. If the captain comes in and the TV's turned off, though, you know what that's about." They all said they did and thanked him for being so nice. Laszlo told him it was no problem and headed on to do his round. He checked the doors, checked the locking mechanisms, and then headed up to the station to let Sergeant Register go home. The man had had a long day and probably wanted to get to his family before it got too late. Laszlo imagined there was probably a hot dinner waiting for him, and he vaguely remembered what that was like. Laszlo hadn't really been aware of much until about 6 months ago. He'd simply been a spirit that existed inside the prison, and that hadn't been so bad. Spirits did not have credit cards to pay off, or mothers to disappoint, or student loans to pay back, as Laszlo had. In all actuality, being dead has kind of taken a load off of him. There was always something interesting going on in Stragview, and Laszlo got to watch most of it go down. He had wondered if he was ever going to be sent to one place or another, but the longer he was dead and the more time passed without it happening, the less he worried about it. He supposed that when God or the devil or whoever wanted him, then they'd come get him, and he decided just to enjoy his afterlife for the time being. Then, someone had started talking to him, and he realized that he wasn't the only sentient ghost in the prison. There were a few others, of course. He had spoken to some of them, but most of them were only sentient because they were slobbering monsters who liked to hurt people. Those really weren't the sorts of people that Laszlo wanted to have a conversation with, so he mostly hung around the dorm where he had died and did his own thing. When a woman had come to talk with him, the woman who had been responsible for his heart attack, actually, he was surprised. She told him she was sorry. He had surprised her as much as she had surprised him, and she asked if he would like to join her for something that was coming up. She was going to be reborn soon. She was working out the details now, and she would have a place for the ghosts in the prison. Laszlo had said it sounded like fun, and after so long being a ghost, it might be nice to have something different going on. Laszlo had been one of the first to join the Ghoul Squad, as the warden had called it. He'd worked in the laundry room. He had worked in the prison. Yeah. Worked in the kitchen, and he had even helped out with some of the work squad stuff that they had started to organize. When they had gone on to guarding the dorms, he had done that as well, and life had been pretty good for a while. Laszlo had always liked having a purpose and something to do, and he'd enjoyed getting back to something like life as it had once been. Most of the spirits were mindless automatons, and he just kept his mouth shut and didn't let on that he was anything but part of the hive mind. Then, Miss Evergreen had overstepped. Poop. Yeah, Blondie, being alive never seems to stop my wife from biting people, so... She tried to take over the prison, and the warden reacted pretty badly to it. It wouldn't have been a problem if the warden had been by himself, but he hadn't been. The warden had had friends, and those friends had come in and put a stop to their takeover. Most of the ghosts had died when they'd tried to attack the people that had come to the prison, but something weird had happened on that night to Laszlo. Laszlo had not felt compelled to go and join them. He had decided to hunker down and wait for the chaos to be over. He saw what was happening to the other members of the Ghoul Squad, and he really didn't want to get involved. They didn't seem to be doing well, and in fact, he suspected that Miss Evergreen was using them as cannon fodder. She was trying to wear down the defenders so they would be easier for the leftover ghosts to take out. Then she'd gone and got herself killed. Well, re-killed, and most of the ghosts had just gone away. Laszlo, however, had not. He had stayed, and when the officers came to the dorm, they had assumed that he was one of them. He'd been more than happy to let them go right on thinking it, too, and when they left for the day, so did he. He'd left the prison, expecting to be found out at any moment, and then he had simply walked up the road a little ways and hid in the woods. He didn't have anything to fear in the woods. The creatures there wouldn't hurt him, and so he just sat on a log and tried to figure out what to do next. He'd expected that he would stop existing, or something would cause him to stop existing. But a weird thing had happened. The closer and closer it got to 6 p.m., the time that his old shift had started. About 5:30, Laszlo felt moved to go to work. It felt as if it was time for him to go to shift, and decided to follow his impulses. Thought she might be. So he headed to work. He worked another shift. Then he went back into the woods and waited for his shift again. After a while, he remembered the old hunting shack that his grandpa had built out here, and had found that it was in good enough shape to live in. Human Resources had gotten with him about getting his check, and he took them into town sometimes and cashed them on his days off. He had the money buried in a coffee can out behind the house. Laszlo had discovered that even though he was technically alive, he didn't need to do anything that living creatures did. He didn't need to eat or sleep or go to the bathroom. He didn't require clothes, and he didn't need anything, really. The uniform that he had... excuse me. Tacos for dinner. The uniform that he'd been given when he was brought back to something like life never seemed to get any more ragged. His boots never seemed to wear out, and Laszlo just kept right on going. It might have been a problem if he'd had a stab wound in his chest or if his throat had been cut, but the only thing to indicate that he might not be human was the fact that he was a little paler than everyone else. That wasn't as big as her... If I could talk tonight. That wasn't as big a hurdle as you might think either. Everybody on midnight shift was a little pale. Laszlo got into the dorm and rifled through the books that had been taken by the previous shift. He whistled as he noticed that somebody had left a copy of Atlas Shrugged up here. That was pretty heavy reading for most of these guys, and he settled in as he started his log and tried to decide how to spend the next 12 hours of his life. He wondered sometimes if he was the only ghost that had made it out of the attack on Stragview, but he tried not to dwell too much on it. If there were others, he hadn't seen them. If there were others, he supposed he would find them eventually. For now, he was just happy to live whatever passed as his life, at least until it came to whatever end lay ahead of him. And there you go. That's your Stragview story this week. I thought it would be kind of cool if maybe like one of the ghost officers made it out. Sounded like it might be neat. I just like to see what you guys are chatting about. You guys are always up to something. Let's see. All right. We'll go on to our last two stories. This first one is called The Ghost in the Attic. And I think you guys will enjoy it. I know you guys well enough to tell you it's right up your alley. Readjust my chair cushion here. There we go. Whew. We may revisit Officer Laszlo a few more times. I'd like to revisit Nurse Claymore, too, you know. Now that Stragview is not in immediate danger from invasion by stuff, you know, we might be able to focus a little bit more on some stories again. You know, like we used to. Excuse me. Okay. The Ghost in the Attic. It was my own fault. I'd been overdoing it lately. I'm not as young as I used to be, and when I got the cold, I thought it was nothing more than a little tickle in the back of my throat. We were trying to make deadlines, and I knew I had to keep working through it if I wanted my team to do their very best. Before I knew it, I was hacking and coughing and nearly too weak to stand. I tried to power through it, but when I collapsed right before the big pitch meeting, someone took me to the hospital, and they discovered that I'd done myself a mischief. The doctor told me that I had pneumonia in both lungs. I told him that was fine, that he could put me on steroids and I'd be back on my feet in a couple of weeks. He told me it wasn't that simple. I had pneumonia. Meh. Try that one again. Hey, Nancy. We're glad you made it. I'd had pneumonia for about a month and a half, and I'd damaged my lungs in a way where the pneumonia had become persistent pneumonia. At least it would if I tried to push it any harder. He recommended at least 3 months of bed rest and taking it extremely easy in the meantime. I don't want you to leave the house or so much as do your own grocery shopping. I want you to stay with someone who's going to be able to provide you with round-the-clock care. Do you have someone like that? Luckily, I did have someone like that. My son Dwayne was my youngest, and he owned a small but very neat home. He'd made a lot of money selling some kind of new currency, and now he worked part-time from home doing data analysis. He'd always... Try that again. We had always been very close, and I knew all I had to do was call him and he would agree right away. I didn't even have to finish the statement before he was telling me to come and stay in his guest bedroom for as long as I needed to. I was ecstatic. It would be a nice change to see my baby every single day of the week. The doctor agreed and sent along a very specific set of instructions for my son. Let's see, where were we? They wouldn't even let me drive over there. Dwayne came and picked me up that same day and practically carried me inside so that he could put me to bed and feed me a bowl of chicken noodle soup. Just like when I was a kid, he said with a grin. You always used to feed me chicken noodle soup and Gatorade and tell me I had to stay in bed if I wanted to feel better. He's such a thoughtful boy. I spent about a week getting used to his house and acclimating to the idea that I wasn't going to be able to work for the foreseeable future. It really made me realize that work was my whole life. All I ever did was work for that company that had landed me in the hospital. Couldn't even really blame the company. I'd worked myself nearly to death, and it made me think that it might be time to focus less on work and more on my own health. I wasn't getting any younger, and my body couldn't go on like that forever. One of the things that was hard to acclimate to was the strange noises that I heard inside my son's house. My son owned a duplex in the Midtown area. It was nice. 2 bedrooms, a den that he used as an office, a big living room, and a guest bedroom to go along. A guest bathroom. A guest bathroom to go along with the big master bedroom. I can't. A guest bathroom to go along with the master bathroom off his room. He kept it so neat as well. I couldn't imagine anything living in the walls that would make that kind of noise. It was weird, a scratching noise. It sounded like rats when they're digging their claws against things, and it woke me up the first night I lay there and listened to it. It made my skin crawl. How could a house this immaculately clean have rats in it? I didn't understand, but as I lay there, I figured I would talk to Dwayne about it in the morning. I finally managed to settle in and go to sleep, but I dreamed about rats scratching their way through the ceiling and coming after me until the light finally came and dispersed all my bad dreams. I told Dwayne about the noises over breakfast, and he looked confused when I brought it up. Rats? Mom, I don't have rats. You must be imagining things. No, I know I heard rats in the ceiling. They're so loud, Dwayne, and I dreamed that they were going to come right through the ceiling and get me. It must be the medication, Mom. I've never heard any noise whatsoever. Either way, I'll put out some traps and see if I can catch these rodents before they drive you bonkers. He didn't believe me, but he did put out some traps. I heard a sound. Ugh. Excuse me. I heard the sound every night for the first 3 or 4 nights, but I suppose I started to get used to it after that. It wasn't just night, either. I would hear it sometimes in the daytime, but it seemed to be most active after dark. Dwayne's traps never caught any rats, but I knew what I heard, and I wasn't going to be told I was playing make-believe. You guys are very distracting. After a week of listening to it, however, I did something one night that showed me it was more than just rats. I need my space back. More than just rats. More than just rats. They were extra loud one night. I could see dust falling from the ceiling as they scratched, and they had really been keeping me awake for hours. I had tossed and turned as the artificial snow came down, and finally I had enough. I sat up in bed and looked at the ceiling as I shouted for them to quiet down and go away. I know how silly that sounds, but I was frustrated, and I wanted the scratching to stop. Give me just a second, guys. I got some loud noise going on in the living room. Give me 2 shakes. I'll be right back. Okay, let's get back to it. Where were we? Okay. The scratching sound stopped, and that was when I heard it for the first time. Hello? The voice was soft and muffled, and seemed to be coming from the same area where the rats had been scratching. It was low, like someone was trying not to be heard, and I had to strain to hear it. Hello? Is someone there? Please, won't you help me? I need help. Won't you please help me? I didn't know what to make of it. It certainly wasn't rats. Rats don't talk. I didn't respond. I just lay there as the voice asked for help a few more times before quieting down. The scratching started again then, and I now believe that it might not be rats, and it might be something a lot worse. I wasn't sure how it could be so. Dwayne's house was practically brand new, but it looked as though he might have a ghost. Now, I don't believe every time somebody tells me they've seen a ghost or anything. I'm as skeptical as the next person, but when you have an experience like that, it's hard to tell yourself that it's just your imagination. My imagination's pretty good, but it's never scratched at the ceiling hard enough to send plaster dust down and begged me for help. It definitely wasn't a dream. At least I hoped it wasn't, but it was possible that maybe I was going a little stir crazy. I've spent 10 days in bed, only getting up to use the bathroom, and with my active lifestyle, that was enough to drive anybody crazy. Still, I couldn't get it out of my head that maybe someone was trying to communicate from the other side. What was the alternative? Was someone trapped in the ceiling of my son's duplex? That was absurd, and I put it out of my mind almost at once. I didn't tell my son about the voices. For starters, I thought he would laugh at me and tell me that I was being silly again. I loved my son deeply, as any mother would, and I was afraid that he would shake his head and think that his old mother was hearing voices, and maybe it was time to have her committed. A close second was that I really believed I might be beginning to lose my mind. Let's try that one again. I might be beginning to lose my mind. The medication they had me on kept me loopy and more than a little unsteady. I was afraid that the meds, mixed with my usual analytical mind, being stuck in a bed 24 hours a day, would create an environment for insanity. After that night, the noise above me began to become more frantic. It always spoke to me after dark. It seemed to wait for my son to turn in or to be gone before it tried to get my attention. I heard it during the day, but it was less frequent. I was usually in a state of grogginess during the day, so if the voice spoke to me, then I was in no position to speak back. That didn't mean I didn't hear it, though. Sometimes the voice would permeate my dreamlike state and whisper things to me. It would tell me how it had been held captive here for quite some time and that it wanted to escape. It would tell me that it was afraid that it would die here because the terrible man kept promising that it would kill it one of these days. It told me that the man who lived in this house had taken it away and done terrible things to it. It told me that I had a moral obligation to help it and that I needed to let someone know before it was too late. Sometimes it didn't say any of those things. Sometimes it just called for help endlessly. It would scratch and scratch and scratch and call for help and beg for help, and I'd feel my mind beginning to unravel a piece at a time. After a month of this, I must have looked pretty crazy, because my son kept taking me to the doctor and talking to him about getting me on some stronger sleep medication. I'm worried that she's not sleeping enough, Dwayne told my doctor. She has dark circles under her eyes, and it's as if she never gets the rest she needs. Has she been crying out in the night or having bad dreams? Dwayne had smiled at them and reached over as he took my hand. I'm sure it hasn't escaped your knowledge, Doc, but my doc is a... Ugh. My mom is a very proud woman. It took a humongous leap for her to come live with me and to ask for help, and I expect that it will take an even bigger one for her to tell me that something is wrong. My mother's always been the strongest woman I know, and she's never been one to ask people for help. It was a little bit alarming to realize that my youngest son knew these things. I'd always tried my best to be strong for him and his sister, but they had... Poop. They had all seen through me, it would appear. He was right. I never asked for help, but it was more because I didn't want to be a burden. I already believed I was a burden on my poor son, and I didn't want him to resent me for asking for help all the time. On the way home, I finally told him what had been keeping me awake, and I saw something strange happen as I did. As I told Dwayne about the odd voices and the scratching, I saw him stiffen in the driver's seat. His hands clenched the steering wheel, hard enough to make me think it might break, and it was clearly taking him an effort to school his face into something more controlled. Was he angry? Was he trying to come to terms with the fact that his mother might be crazy? I didn't know, but when he turned to look at me, his face was back in control, and he was the same Dwayne that I had always known. Mom, I'm so sorry. If I'd known that, I would have asked the doctor to prescribe you something. This is clearly taking a toll on you, and it seems like you might be going a little cabin crazy. Let me try to get you out of the house a little bit more. We can go for walks in your wheelchair. We can get you a little more sunlight. I'm kicking myself for leaving you in that bed all the time. The doctor said bed rest, but he didn't say we couldn't go out at all. It's been so cold the last few months that I didn't want to exacerbate your pneumonia by taking you out in the weather. Don't worry, Mom. We'll work some daily exercise into your routine. Maybe that will make you feel a little less crazy. I slept like a baby that night, but in the back of my dreams, I could hear someone moaning and being... begging someone to stop. I never quite woke up. Whatever my son had cooked for dinner had been heavy enough that it made me sleepy, but I picked up the small noises from the house as I dreamed. In my dreams, Dwayne and I were having a picnic in the park, like we used to when he was a kid. But just out of sight, I could hear someone begging someone else to stop as they hurt them. I looked at Dwayne as he sat eating a sandwich and watching a couple of girls play frisbee, and if he heard it, he seemed not to notice. Oh my. Dwayne was as good as his word. He took me out for walks in the morning and in the afternoon, pushing my wheelchair and making sure that I was warm enough to so that my pneumonia didn't come back worse. He would come home and make me comfortable and then get back to work as I read or watched TV or just existed. I started to notice his daily routine a little more after that. He would work every morning from 8:30 to 11:30. Then he would have lunch, and then he would simply disappear from 1:30 to 3:30. He said he was going out to run errands, but I'm pretty sure I never heard the front door close, and once I thought I saw him in the hallway. At 3:30, he would come home, and then he would go out. Then we would go out and get a little more exercise. Then he would come back and work. Dang it, I'm losing the track here. Cook dinner and start work again until 7:30, and then he would watch a little TV with me before I went to bed. I would become aware of him moving around after I went to bed sometimes, but mostly he was in bed by 9:30 and the house was quiet. Quiet except for the scratching and the soft cries for help. I don't remember them a lot after that. The new medication my doctor had put me on must have been pretty potent, but I could still hear them sometimes as they asked me for help and begged me to let them go. The scratching was weak and somehow light, like fingernails, or more like someone dragging a spoon across the ceiling. It was so infrequent, and I imagined that maybe the ghost was trying to pass on now. Maybe they were beginning to realize that they were dead, and it was time to move on. It all came to a head one night when I woke up to find that Dwayne was gone. It was about 9:30, and Dwayne had told me he was going out with friends. They were going to have some drinks and maybe do a little bar hopping, but he told me that he would be back by 11:30 at the latest. He gave me my meds and fed me dinner and told me that if I needed anything, I should call him. I knew that he didn't get to go out a lot. He was so busy, and he was so attentive to my needs that I wanted him to go have a good time. I told him to have fun, and he reiterated that if I needed anything, not to hesitate to call. When I woke up and heard something in the hallway, my first instinct was to get up and see what was happening. I pulled myself into my wheelchair, my legs still unsteady, and as I wheeled out into the hall... Dang it. As I wheeled out into the hallway, I could hear long, loud thumps coming from the ceiling near the entrance to my son's room. They were always the same. 3 loud thumps, and then about 20 seconds of silence, before there were another 3 loud thumps. I took out my phone and started to dial Dwayne's number, but then I froze before I could put in the last of the numbers. Dwayne was such a good boy, and I wanted him to have a nice night. This was just the usual antics of whatever lived in the roof, and I didn't want to disturb him because his house had a restless spirit living in it. Then a hatch popped down from the ceiling, and something fell out onto the hardwood floor near his doorway. I screamed and grabbed the doorframe for support. Whatever it was, it looked to be wrapped in a sheet or some kind of garment. They were breathing heavily, and I could see flecks of blood on the fabric of whatever was covering it. They were lying on the floor as they tried to catch their breath, but it was no ghost. It was very clearly a living, breathing person. When they picked their head up, our eyes met, and I saw that it was a young woman. She had to be between 30 and 20, and her face was filthy. Her hair was long and bedraggled, her skin caked in dust and grime. She raised a hand at me, and I thought for a moment that she didn't have any fingers. I squinted at her, and I could see that she had stumps of fingers, but all the fingers on her left hand had been removed to the second knuckle. Her thumb was still intact, however, and as she moved her other hand, I saw that it was the same. She began trying to pull herself along the floor, coughing at me as she croaked for help and for me to help get her out of here. I realized pretty quickly that this was what I had been hearing, not some ghost or vengeful spirit. She was dragging herself along as she made her way to the door, and I finished dialing Dwayne's number as she headed for the living room. He picked up on the third ring, and he sounded a little out of it. Mom? Mom? Is everything okay? Dwayne, you have to come home. Some woman's broken into your house. I could hear the sounds of an active bar behind him, but his voice had lost some of the drunkenness it had held. What girl? What are you talking about, Mom? She came out of the ceiling. I heard something, and then she fell out of the ceiling. I think she's the girl I've been hearing for a while now, Dwayne. I'm going to call the police. You need to come home and speak with them. They're going to want to see the homeowner when... The phone suddenly went dead, and I worried that he might have collapsed. I called the police, and they came on the run. They generally do when you tell them that you're a 60-year-old woman in a house with a home invader. I managed to wheel myself to the door and found the dirty girl trying to fumble with the door locks in order to get out. Ugh. She was having a time of it without any fingers, and when she asked me to open it for her, I shook my head and told her that the cops were on their way. Were on the way. She started yelling at me to let her out, and that I needed to let her out, but I just stood there as the blue and white lights began to flash outside, and an authoritative voice told me to open the door and move away. The police took the woman into custody and took my statement. They also had a look at the attic, a place I didn't even know existed, and discovered something I wasn't ready for. They found that the woman had been chained up in the attic, the chains set into the wall with thick concrete screws. She'd managed to slip her bindings after her hands became so thin that they could no longer hold her. The police believed that she might be Lily Rockaway, the girl that had been missing for about 6 months. The police believed that she might have been a runaway, someone who had decided to leave town all of a sudden, but finding her here led to more questions than answers. They tried to call my son, but his phone just goes to voicemail. I don't know what to think anymore. Was this woman in the attic the girl that I was hearing every night? Did my son put this girl in the attic? The police seem to think so, but that can't be. My Dwayne is a good boy. He would never do anything like this. Dwayne, if you're reading this, then you need to come and turn yourself in and talk to the police. As for that poor girl, I hope she gets the help she needs. I've returned to my own house, and I'm taking care of myself as best I can. After what I saw that night, I can't ever spend another night in my son's house again. And there you go. There we go. There you go. That's The Ghost in the Attic. And we've got one more story after this one. Oh, no. Alrighty. We're going to go from some kidnappy horror to a little bit of body horror on this one. You body horror enthusiasts will like this one, I can guarantee you. This one is called The Blooming, and it's going to be our last story for the night. So I hope you guys enjoy it. I work for a landscaping company as a landscaper's assistant. It sounds pretty good, but it's mostly a lot of grunt work. You go and get people's lunch, or you go and get people's drinks, or you go and carry things they don't want to carry, and it's mostly a lot of gopher stuff. The company I work for is pretty big in the area. They do a lot of landscaping and yard renovations and stuff like that. I'd really hoped for something better at this point in my life, but I have to pay bills, and there just aren't a lot of other ways to do it around here. It happened while I was coming back from getting lunch. We'd been working for this rich fella near the waterfront, and my boss had been pretty frustrated when he sent me to get Arby's for everybody. We had been back and forth on the had been back and forth on this display for a couple of weeks, and we just couldn't seem to get the seedlings in deep enough for them to take root. Something about the ground on the hillside where he wanted these particular plants was odd. The soil seemed like a mixture of clay and gravel, but the gravel quality was a little thicker than usual. We had tried planting, we tried digging, and short of blowing up the hillside, I didn't see any other way to change the consistency of the ground. The client and my boss were getting pretty grumpy about it, and I saw him putting his head together with his foreman when I left an hour ago to get sandwiches. Now, the area we've been working on was empty, and it appeared that everyone had gone home for the day. Somebody had set up these weird little boxes every few feet facing the hillside, but I didn't really see anything odd about them. "Hello," I called as I walked up with bags of sandwiches. "Hello, where is everybody?" I had about a split second before one of the boxes to my right exploded like a bomb. If it hadn't been for my throwing a hand up and placing of the Arby's bag, I would have probably been blinded. It actually did damage my right eye, but the doctor told me that I'd probably gain back at least 30% of my vision in a couple of weeks. My chest, my arms, my legs, however, were hit with something like gravel kicked up by a truck. Damn big truck, too, and I felt more than a few of them pass right through my shirt and pants and penetrate my skin. I stumbled back and dropped. The shredded bag falling from my hand, and I landed against the hillside as I covered my face with my bleeding arms. Another explosion went off in another area of the work spot. Another area of the work. Another area of the work site, and I heard somebody screaming to stop. My boss came running up about that point, followed by the foreman and the client. The boss didn't look pissed anymore. He looked scared. Turned out that the client had told him that he had until this afternoon to get the seedlings on the hillside, or he was going to go with another company. In desperation, my boss had let the foreman talk him into something that might have been a little unadvisable. Hang on a second, guys. Make this a little bigger. I'm old. My eyesight's bad. What they had done was essentially load seed into a blunderbuss so they could fire it at a high rate into the soil. The foreman, an old guy that had been in the Army during Desert Storm, said that the penetration rate should be enough to get them deep enough in the soil that they could take root. I don't pretend to know what they were thinking, but apparently they were eager enough to get started, and they forgot that their assistant had gone out for food. They had set a timer and they had bunkered down to cover in case of any emergencies or, in case something went wrong. They didn't actually use blunderbusses. Where would they have gotten them from at this point? What they used was a tube similar to the one used to fire mortar shells out of on the 4th of July. They pointed them at the hillside and set them up to fire after about 60 seconds. And my dumb ass just managed to stumble into them when they started going off. Lucky me, huh? I spent a couple of hours in the emergency room as they treated my wounds. The doctor said the wounds weren't too serious, saying that it would have been like getting shot with rock salt more than buckshot. There was definitely skin penetration, but he believed that my body would just push the seeds out on their own. The eye was concerning, but he assured me that I'd probably get most of my vision back eventually. He gave me some drops and cream and told me to use them as directed if I didn't want to walk around with an eye patch for the rest of my life. Excuse me. Alright, where were we? My boss paid for all of it, of course. It was the only way he could avoid a lawsuit, and told me to take the next couple of weeks off, with pay. The doctor told me to keep my wounds clean and to take it easy for the next couple of weeks. So I considered myself fortunate to have a nice little vacation while I convalesced. It didn't start right away. I actually didn't notice it till about 3 or 4 days after the accident. I was sitting on my couch with my shirt off, watching TV and taking painkillers anytime I felt a little twinge. And then I looked down and noticed something weird. Growing out of the area just below my left nipple was a little plant. It was just a sprout, the leaves barely formed, and I muted the TV as I bent over so I could take a look at it better. They had cleaned the wounds, but they'd been very clear that my body would probably push the debris out on its own. It appeared that my body had decided to keep the seeds and give them life. I looked around and saw there was another one growing as well. I had 2 little blooms on my chest, and I wasn't as worried about it as I should have been at that point. It was kind of cool. I'd never seen anyone with plants growing out of them before, and I was on enough painkillers that I decided to see where it would go before it finally stopped. I noticed them on day 4, and by day 6 I counted 6 sprouts coming out of my chest. 2 of them were coming out of my stomach, 2 of them were coming out of my upper chest, 1 of them was coming out of the dead center of my chest, and 1 was actually pretty close to my heart. I remembered thinking it was pretty cool, looking at the plants as they grew leaves and started to gain definition. They didn't hurt. Nothing really hurt, and I wondered what I should do about them. They didn't appear to be hurting anybody, so I figured I would leave them alone and see how it all shook out. I had a doctor's appointment in a couple of weeks so they could check the wounds, so I figured if it was a problem, they'd let me know. This was also when I started writing down my observations, so I could go back and look at it in a few days. Day 8. I'm starting to get worried about the speed at which these plants are growing. I don't know exactly what we were planting on that hilltop, but the plants are beginning to look less like seedlings and more like actual flowers. I say worried, but that didn't stop me from going out into the backyard to sunbathe a little bit. I think it's neat to have plants growing on me, and I thought that they might like a little sun, too. I felt a little like I might need to protect them. They were just little plants, after all. I don't want anybody to try to pull them out, and I figured if they got a little bigger, people might not try to. Day 9. Some of the guys from the lawn service stopped by to check on me. I told them to wait a minute so I could put on a bathrobe and went to meet them at the door. I didn't want them to see the plants and ask questions. I'd gotten a little paranoid about what people would do when they saw them, and I'd started to feel something in my chest that I associated with love. These plants were becoming like my babies, and I didn't want anybody to hurt them. They asked how I was feeling, told me I looked good, and I told them that I'd been relaxing and tried not to reopen my wounds. They asked if I was coming back to work anytime soon, and I told them I still had 2 weeks of leave before I had to come back to work. They said the boss had made us all take a safety briefing on checking your surroundings before coming back to the job site. I thought that was pretty funny, given that he was the one who had forgotten to inform me of what we were doing. They all said that they hoped I got to feeling better and that they hoped they'd see me again soon. I threw the robe off once they left and went to lay out in the backyard again. I'd felt something while I had that bathrobe on. It felt like something was crying inside me, like it didn't want to be in the dark. It wanted to feel the warmth of the sun. I don't know, maybe it's just some weird feeling from the painkillers, but I lay out there until the sun set, and when I came back inside, I had a pretty wicked sunburn to show for it. Day 12. I'd already decided that I wasn't going back to the doctor. The plants were getting bigger. Some of them were starting to show signs of flowering, and I'd begun to take cold showers so I could water them. It's strange to say, but sometimes I'd lay awake at night and just look at them. I'd gone to the hardware store and got one of those lamps that you use for when you're growing indoors. The guy probably thought I was a pothead, but I set it up over my bed, and I've started sleeping on my back for the first time in decades. As the light looks down on them, I find myself watching them grow a little bigger every day. There's a weird tightness in my chest that I can only equate with love, and this is the closest I'll probably ever get to being a mother. It's a funny feeling, discovering that you love something so late in. That you love something so late in life. Who would have ever thought that I'd finally have some kids of my own at 35? I didn't even need to wait for a wife or nothing. Day 15. I'd seen other buds starting to come up as well. It's getting a little harder to breathe, but it's probably just the pride, right? I'm so proud of my little flowers and how big they've gotten. It's like I've got a garden on my chest now. The original 6 are about ready to bud, and I can't wait to see what kind of flowers they make. Aside from them, there's another half dozen that seem to have sprouted up out of nowhere, and they're becoming like little chest hairs. I should really ask my boss what kind of seeds these are, but maybe he would want them back if I asked him too many questions. He might think these plants are company resources or something. I can't have that. I can't lose my babies. Day 18. The new buds had started to open, and there was a riot of color across my chest. Reds and golds and oranges and yellows, and even a couple of blue flowers had popped up. The original 6 plants had made about 3 or 4 flowers each, and the new ones are starting to look like they might make flowers soon too. I feel like I should be more worried about this cough that I've had lately, but it just doesn't seem as important as it would have a couple of days ago. I'm not as hungry as I used to be either. I really only eat maybe 1 big meal a day, but I really crave water. I've been drinking at least 2 or 3 gallons a day, and I still feel thirsty most of the time. It's probably just the painkillers. Maybe I should cut back a little bit. God only knows what those Vicodins are doing to the plants. Day 20. I've seen more new buds now, but I'm beginning to get a little concerned about my breathing. I've been breathing in shallow gasps for the last 3 or 4 days. I can't seem to get off the couch either. I manage to get up a couple of times a day to get more water, maybe catch a bite. I've stopped getting up to go to the bathroom altogether. Somehow, just going, getting off the couch. That's not the line. No. Here on the couch seems to be helping the plants. I've seen grass beginning to grow amidst my thick chest hairs. Pretty soon, I guess I'll have a regular backyard here. I seem to be afraid to go to sleep these days. Not because I think I might not wake up, but because if I watch closely enough, I can see the plants growing right before my very eyes. I'm afraid that I'm going to miss something, and then they'll know I wasn't watching. My poor little babies need attention, and Mama's here to give it to them. Day 23. I don't know if I'm going to be able to write this much more. My arms are getting really heavy. Seems to be taking a lot of effort to breathe. My chest is really tight. I sometimes think I can feel something moving underneath it. I don't know what's going on, but the flowers are really doing well. They just keep growing and growing. And the colorful blossoms bring me joy as I lay here and try to make the water last as long as it can. The last time I got up, I went ahead and brought about 12 gallons from the living room, where I've been keeping it. The Amazon guy looked a little weird as he dropped off all that water on the front porch. And I had the rest a couple of times as I tried to bring it all in. I don't even drink it anymore. I just pour it right onto my skin. I don't eat either. Whatever these plants are, they seem to be keeping me alive, and I appreciate them for that. It's nice when people can take care of their parents in their old age. Day 30. This is probably gonna be the last one of these that I do. I'm so tired all the time. It takes everything I have to keep breathing. My babies are doing so well. They're growing out of me like a garden. And I can't say that I've ever been prouder of anything in my entire life. I think my heart's been stopping in my sleep. So I just been staying up for as long as I can. I'm out of water, but it appears that my children have found something else to eat. To whoever finds this, don't hurt my plants, please. Just bury me somewhere nice so they can get bigger. I want my gravestone to be covered in flowers. I want them to keep growing up and up long after I'm gone. Tell my boss I don't blame him for any of this. This is the single greatest moment of my life, and I owe him so much. I feel fulfilled for the first time ever, and it's all because of him. And there you go. That's our last story. Ugh. Oh, I forgot to stop recording. Shit. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed tonight's stories. And I do hope we'll see you again next Wednesday for more. Remember, next week it's going to, well, not, okay. Next Wednesday, we're going to read a grandpa story. So don't miss out on that and all the continued nonsense in Kashmir and all the fun stuff we do around here all the time. Till then, I hope you guys have a great evening. I hope you guys have a good day and a good week. And I hope you guys have been enjoying the Cozy Horror. Till next time, this is Dr. Plague signing off. And I'll see you guys next time. Love ya. Bye-bye.